The NFL draft is complete, so we need to do a rookie mock draft now to showcase all of the new values for these players now that we know draft capital and landing spot, because this draft board this year is almost completely different than what it was before the draft. But this rookie mock is a little bit different because for the past couple of years, I have run this series of mocks where I take a real dynasty team from one of our viewers and all of their rookie picks, and I draft as if I was that viewer. For me, I think this is just a super fun and unique way to do rookie mocks, and for you guys watching, I hope it's a different way to hear my personal thought process at each and every pick with the context of a real dynasty team. So for today's draft, we're going to be looking at Cory's team, who is in a 12-team Superflex league with 1.5 PPR tight end premium and 10-man starting lineups, including a quarterback in the Superflex, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, a tight end, and 2 flex positions. And for his roster, he says that he doesn't have any quarterbacks or running backs worth noting, but does have Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Garrett Wilson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Elijah Moore, Sky Moore, and Kyle Pitts at tight end. So a phenomenal young receiving core, and it's really just our job to just add quarterbacks and running backs in this year's rookie draft with the picks that he has. So taking a look at the picks that he has the 101, the 102, the 104, the 105, and the 2.01, and then a couple of thirds, fourths, and fifths this year. So we have the firepower to really take this team to the next level this year with the receiving core that he already has. So let's just get started. Let's get it going right into it. I'm going to hit start on this rookie mock, which, by the way, this is done by fantasymocks.com. So if you guys are interested, go check out fantasymocks.com. I think it's a phenomenal mock draft resource by one of my friends, Andy Estridge. Check him out on Twitter as well. And it's really the only mock draft simulator that I've seen where you can actually pick the individual picks that you have rather than selecting like the actual, like all the 7s or all the 8s or all the 2s, you know, stuff like that. You can actually pick every single individual slot and pick that you are picking at, which is why I love this mock draft simulator. Well, let's get to the draft. We are up on the clock at the 1.01. And of course, guys, I mean, there is only one pick right now. The NFL draft did not change anything. The 1.01 in basically, I'm going to say 99% of formats out there is Bijan Robinson. He is a stud. He's probably the safest player that you can draft in this class entirely. The 8th overall pick to the Atlanta Falcons, probably the most ideal and best landing spot for Bijan Robinson to actually go to in terms of volume and situation and just pure opportunity for being an elite fantasy running back. Bijan Robinson is the 1.01, and you should not really be considering anybody else at that pick. But we're up again, 1.02, and this is really interesting because he says that we don't have any quarterbacks to note, and he does have the 1.02 and then the 1.04 and the 1.05. So you're essentially guaranteed 2 of the top 3 quarterbacks from Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson, or CJ Stroud. You're guaranteed 2 of those 3 guys, Corey. What would be really interesting, I think, is if you don't care who those 2 quarterbacks are, if they're all kind of similar to you, then you could probably game the system and take a positional player here at 1.02 and then force 1.03 to take whoever he ends up taking, whether it's JSN or one of the quarterbacks, because then you're guaranteed 2 of those quarterbacks at 104 and 1.05. So if you wanted to game the system, if you really preferred JSN or really preferred Jahmyr Gibbs, don't really care who the 2 quarterbacks are that you end up taking, then you could go that route. If you do care about one of those quarterbacks, for me, I would be taking Anthony Richardson at this 1.02. If you don't really care who you get between Gibbs or JSN, I would take Anthony Richardson 1.02 because he has the upside, the clear-cut rushing and fantasy upside that he gives you. He landed, I think, in a phenomenal landing spot with the Indianapolis Colts, a place that I wanted Will Levis to go to because of the stability that he has from the coaching staff with Shane Steichen, coming from the Philadelphia Eagles, who just made Jalen Hurts, you know, like an MVP caliber, almost won the Super Bowl kind of player. That's what he did with Jalen Hurts. I think that he can do the same thing with Anthony Richardson. He's got the best receiving core so far of the 3 quarterbacks. He's got Jonathan Taylor. Everything that you want, I think, is in place for Anthony Richardson to succeed. And I think regardless of whether or not he's a good passer, he's going to run the ball, and he's going to be fantastic for fantasy because he runs the ball. Think Justin Fields last year. So Anthony Richardson is my rookie QB1. I would take him at the 1.02 if you don't care about who it is between JSN and Jahmyr Gibbs that you're going to get at the 1.05. So let's just go that route. Take Anthony Richardson here, see what comes back. So Bryce Young was taken at the 1.03. So here we're going to get the other quarterback. We're going to get CJ Stroud. And then the decision, JSN or Jahmyr Gibbs. I think this one, I've kind of flip-flopped on who this would be basically all draft season. I think pre-draft, the answer was Jaxon Smith-Njigba, but because he fell to the Seattle Seahawks and we're not really totally in love with that situation, even though I think that it is a good long-term situation for him with Tyler Lockett being a cut candidate. The Seahawks can save $10 million by cutting Tyler Lockett this time next year. So JSN could just be the wide receiver 2, or maybe even the wide receiver 1 over DK Metcalf in terms of targets as early as 2024. But also, Jahmyr Gibbs got first-round draft capital, not just first-round draft capital, 12th overall draft capital to the Detroit Lions. And we now know that DeAndre Swift has been traded to the Philadelphia Eagles. So Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be playing that DeAndre Swift kind of role if David Montgomery is playing the Jamal Williams kind of role. And we know that that is super valuable. Not even to mention the fact that Jahmyr Gibbs, if he stays healthy, maybe he cuts into David Montgomery's role. I do believe that Gibbs is a better running back than David Montgomery, so he could cut and take a little bit more rushing every single week as he gets integrated into this offense on top of the receiving upside that he possesses. So for me, the decision between these two is Jahmyr Gibbs. I would be taking Jahmyr Gibbs over Jaxon Smith-Njigba. Plus, there's also that additional, you have so many other wide receivers. Maybe you could just address a little bit of a need here. And I always say take best player available regardless of need or position. But if it is really this split down the middle and you just need a tiebreaker, then I think it's okay to go with some needs. So we're going to go with Jahmyr Gibbs here as the RB2 in this draft and the second running back that you got, because you got Bijan Robinson, which is fantastic. So amazing start here with 2 quarterbacks, 2 running backs off the board. We're already looking strong, but we're up again at the 2.01. And I think this is really where the draft just kind of opens up, because there's so many different, ways that the draft could go for the back half of the first round, because you have all the other first-round wide receivers in Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnson, and Zay Flowers. Dalton Kincaid was a first-round tight end as well. Where does Will Levis slot in? He slotted in at the 1.08 here as a early second-round pick to the Tennessee Titans. Zach Charbonnet here was the other pick at the 110. Did get second-round draft capital. Did not love the landing spot to the Seattle Seahawks. Is now basically going to split potentially 50-50 with Kenneth Walker, if not even potentially. Maybe he's just not a direct handcuff or backup to Kenneth Walker, but he could be on the 40 side of a 60-40 split, the 35 side of a 65-35 split. It's really just an unknown for Charbonnet. Super unfortunate, because he did have the potential to be a workhorse running back if he landed almost anywhere else other than Seattle. But 2.01 here, let's look at the players that we have here on the clock that is available for us. Hendon Hooker at quarterback, not really looking in that direction. Israel Abanikanda, Tyjae Spears. Michael Mayer was another second-round tight end. You got Josh Downs, Roschon Johnson, Kendre Miller, Devon Achane. A lot of different places that you can go, a lot of different positions that you can go. I think as of right now, if I'm just going by best player available in terms of my personal rankings, that pick is Kendre Miller. I think that I just love the New Orleans Saints landing spot for Kendre Miller. He's my RB3 ahead of Zach Charbonnet. I have him ahead of Devon Achane, even though he landed with the Miami Dolphins, which does sound like a really good landing spot, and I do agree it is definitely a very good landing spot for Achane. I did have Miller ahead of Achane before the NFL draft. They both got the same draft capital. They both went to favorable landing spots for running backs, so I moved both of them up. I just kept Kendre Miller ahead of Devon Achane as I had it that way before the NFL draft. So if we're looking at all of this, I personally would be taking Kendre Miller out of all these other players. I think Michael Mayer would be interesting too. You have Kyle Pitts. Maybe you can look at Sam Laporta instead if you wanted an upside shot at a little bit more of an athletic tight end in just as good of a situation with the Detroit Lions. But I personally would be taking Kendre Miller here, so that's what I'm going to do. And then we'll just see how the rest of this second round and the majority of the third round goes, because we are now up at the 311. And if you're looking through this draft board, I am recording this Saturday night, so the ADP and the rankings on this may not necessarily look as fantastic or as accurate as it might be when you're actually drafting in your rookie drafts, because Sean Tucker, as much as I love it, is up here at the 3.01, which he did go undrafted, but he did land with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, so not a terrible landing spot. But there is probably going to be some hiccups in here as the ADP and the rankings are being fleshed out and more post-draft stuff is coming in rather than what we thought of pre-draft. So you may see some of those blemishes. But for the most part, I feel pretty good about the way this draft board ended up shaking out. and the players that we have available here at the 311. So let's discuss. We have Darnell Washington, who did fall a little bit behind a handful of tight ends, did land with the Pittsburgh Steelers as well behind Pat Freiermuth, so a little unfortunate there. Jayden Reed, second-round wide receiver to the Green Bay Packers. I am really interested in that. I love Evan Hull. He was one of the guys that I was very interested in terms of when and where he would go as a sleeper kind of running back. Love the landing spot in Indianapolis as well. You got Tank Dell, Deuce Vaughn, all these other guys in here that are just really just dart throws at this point. So I think here at the 311, because you have so many picks and you have the opportunity to take a handful of these kind of dart throw players, I'm going to take Jayden Reed with the first one, second round draft capital to the Green Bay Packers. He could come in and potentially slide in over Romeo Doubs. He could potentially compete with Christian Watson. Maybe he's the new favorite target for Jordan Love. We really don't have any idea. I think Jayden Reed is a pretty solid wide receiver. I love the discount that I'm getting on him versus like Marvin Mims and Jonathan Mingo, even behind some of these other second and third round wide receivers. So I love getting Jayden Reed there. Then here at the 312, we're back up again. I'm going to take Evan Hull. That's for sure one of those as well too. And by the way, if Chase Brown is there, Chase Brown is like an immediate anywhere in the third, take Chase Brown. I don't care if it's 301, if it's 312, anywhere in between. Chase Brown is my auto third round pick. So if he happens to be there, take him. Absolutely. But we got 2 picks left here, 4.01 and 5.01. So with this pick, Darnell Washington still there. You got Tank Dell, A.T. Perry, a bunch of these day 3 wide receivers. Kenny McIntosh also went to the Seahawks. So that's really weird. Puka Nacua. I think I am going to take Eric Gray. I saw his name here like immediately as I was scrolling through. I was just kind of trying to list other players that might be of interest here. I'm going to take Eric Gray, another one of those players that I highlighted with Evan Hull as very interesting to me before the NFL draft in terms of when and where he actually might go. He could be interesting, could be a sleeper. I love that he landed with the New York Giants. I think that's a fantastic spot for him as a pure handcuff to Saquon Barkley. I'm not really buying into this in terms of like, oh, well, when Saquon Barkley doesn't get a long-term deal, then Eric Gray can take over. No, I'm not. That's not what I'm going for. I'm just going for handcuff value right now. So I think Eric Gray is a very good, very capable running back who can be a 3-down workhorse for that week or two that if Saquon Barkley were to get hurt and Eric Gray takes over, I think he would be fantastic in that offense as the direct handcuff to Saquon Barkley. So that's why I love that with Eric Gray. And then here we're up again at the 501. This is just pure dart throw territory. If the 3rd and the 4th round pick were dart throws, and this is even worse right here at the 501. I'm going to take Cameron Latu down in here. He was a 3rd round tight end, so that is just kind of interesting just in terms of the draft capital. I'd prefer him probably over a lot of these other day 3 wide receivers, some undrafted wide receivers. All of these other guys, the quarterbacks I'm not really into as well too. So I'm going to take a little bit of a draft capital stack here with Cameron Latu, and we're going to call it there. So that is the draft board. That is the way that this 5-round rookie mock shook out. Corey, I hope this video helped you understand my process on these picks with the team that you have. I think you're in a phenomenal position to compete not only in 2023, but for many, many years down the line in the future. And also just thank you for offering up your team for this video. Thank you for being a supporter of the channel and being a channel member. And then to everybody else watching, I will be doing more of these videos throughout the month of May, but I will only be making videos for people who are members of this channel. So if you want me to do a video just like how I did for this, for your actual roster and your draft picks, click the link down in the description below, become a member and get access not only to that video, but extra content every single month from Justin and I, and just help support what we're doing here. And if you don't want to become a member, that's okay too. Just drop a comment down below with your team and draft picks, and I'll do my best just to comment back who I'd be looking to take at each pick. It just won't be much more in depth than that. But I appreciate y'all watching. And if you'd like to check out my immediate reactions from round 1 of the NFL draft, then you can check that video out right up here.